All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. Thank you once again, Usha, for appreciate you taking the time. What time is it where you're at?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. So
Yeah.
we're
Central
on the
time.
same Central Time. So
Yeah.
thank you. I know after a long day at work, probably one of the last things that you want to do is hop on another Zoom call, right? And talk about Scrum even more. But I appreciate you. So Usha, why don't you tell me when you fell in love with Agile?
So in my we got introduced to Agile at the organization I worked prior to my AAA, which was Nestle.
Mm-hmm.
So they were moving away from waterfall to Agile, and they had started. It's a metric organization, and they introduced Agile. So we started small, Scrum of Scrums with small teams, and doing small, every team having a product owner and doing the work. Turned out that only goes so far. So, but one of the things they did was they slowly started expanding the horizons. So
Mm-hmm.
they started getting the people to actually start taking the classes, training, and then they brought in a coach to actually teach the safe agile
Mm-hmm.
team level, and then at the program level.
Mm-hmm.
So that kind of was the background how I got introduced. Before that, I was in the organization with Waterfall, and the Agile comes in and everything changes for everybody overnight.
Sure.
uh, Organization, when they just make calls like that, they do calls like that. Good thing was they did introduce coaches, and they did provide training on
Mm-hmm.
on the job.
Mm-hmm.
So the you kind of like don't know where you fall in, and everybody was allowed to pick up what they wanted. So I just felt like I was at that point in my career where I either had to choose to be a product owner or a scrum master.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, I just decided I was a better scrum master than a PO.
Sure.
Seems like a lot of people were waiting to be product owners, so I kind of chose to be a scrum master. It
Mm-hmm.
just made sense for me, for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the best thing about when I really felt like this, that I really fell in love kind of thing, is I think there were a few concepts with the scrum master role, like servant leadership, influence without power.
Mm-hmm.
Those concepts, you kind of, and I think the whole agile concept of producing work on regular cadence at small bites of work.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually not the norm when you're in waterfall, and you kind of realize when a project is going on for 3 months, a lot of people are waiting on things to happen,
Sure.
and then all of a sudden things are happening at development level that goes on for 2-3 months, requirements goes on for 2-3 months, back to back, all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It just didn't feel right all through your life. So, but you don't have an alternative until the agile showed up. So I think that's one of the reasons it felt good in so many levels when
Mm-hmm.
agile came. I kind of totally love that it's within the team, nobody tells, because organization structure was such that if the development crossed the times that they were given, or they had the time when they were supposed to finish development,
Mm-hmm.
it hurt testing, or if the requirements were not done rightly, and if there were missed requirements that were found. So you kind of felt like all these silos was not really good.
Mm-hmm.
You just didn't know if there was an alternative, right? So recently, when they started moving, organizations started embracing Agile Transformation.
Mm-hmm.
You can see a lot of those holes getting filled in.
Sure.
So I think, yeah, so that's kind of the time I got introduced and started really enjoying Agile.
Sure. So tell me about how many years total have you been working as a Scrum Master?
About 7 years, close
Seven.
to.
7 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And so you don't have to tell me what organizations you worked at, although we did work at an organization together. What different industries have you worked in?
So I worked in manufacturing, and I worked in insurance industry.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the things, right? The industries that you work in, they adapt. So Agile is a loose framework. It is
Mm-hmm.
not really very, very strict structures or strict rules. Use the framework and try to evolve the Agile that works for your organization.
Mm-hmm.
So the manufacturing company that I worked for, there was a big, large organization. The insurance company I work for is a medium-sized organization.
Mm-hmm.
So based on those things, I can see whichever direction the organizations chose to go, why their calls felt perfectly right for the organizations.
Sure. So tell me, which frameworks have you worked in? Which scaling frameworks?
I worked on SAFe,
Mm-hmm.
SAFe framework for
Mm-hmm.
Agile, and worked on Simple Scrum,
Mm-hmm.
then SAFe's framework for scaling,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other framework that I worked on was less framework.
Okay.
We also use less basic as well as less
Huge.
huge, which is advanced one, a scaled up framework basically.
Right. And so, which framework would you say is your favorite?
I think so. Let's first speak about the differences, what I saw between
Sure.
two,
Okay.
and what I like better for the reasons I saw the differences. So the safe scaled framework was very structured framework.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a lot of more roles at enterprise level, at product level, at solution level. So and there are more defined solution architect, release train engineer, and solution product owner. So they had more roles based on the scale. So at the team level, you had a product owner. At the solution level, you had a solution product owner. So there were more roles, and you worked on bigger initiatives, and you had a lot of good things. One of the things that made me feel about that part of the Agile, the scale framework Agile, was that it wasn't agile enough,
Right.
to say
Right.
the least,
It's
right?
kind of rigid,
Because
right?
it had a lot of structure, and people then again created the barriers because it has to do certain things in certain way, and suddenly it felt a little bit more restricted in that sense. But when you have a bigger organization and you have to scale up, I think that works really good, because with bigger organizations comes more number of teams. With more number of teams comes more layers, and so
Right.
you do need that.
Right.
But what I did when I worked in less huge framework, which is basically a little more ad hoc. It doesn't have any structures. The roles are very basic, three-level roles, and there is no, and people are just producing work, and there's a lot more freedom to evolve on regular basis. So I kind of appreciated the less framework just for the flexibility and the breathing space it gives you.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about, again, so what are some of the, I guess, deficiencies you found in each of the different frameworks that you've worked in?
So one efficiency in a SAFe framework, right? They do the PI planning, program increment planning, and when they do it, for every quarter, and they have 4 weeks of sprints, which is a sprint is 2 week sprint, and then they have 4 sprints, and then they have inspect and adapt week, IP week they call that. Where they come and show some innovative things, and they do, and then they have an overall retro, and at the end of the day they provide solution, and all the business partners are called, and you show the product. So in that phase, one of the good things is when they do the planning, right? They do a quarterly planning at that level. They have a roadmap. The roadmap is already built, but they come for the quarter and they say this is our goal or the milestone we want to achieve for the quarter. So I thought one of the things that SAFe does very well, very very well, is like they have this roadmap, and they do quarterly PI plan increments, which basically means you're meeting your milestone 1, 2, 3 for that year, and between those sprints, every single sprint you come and show small demos, but it's not big things. You're not planning more. You're not coming together, and a lot of people. It's 2 days per quarter.
Sure.
That people come together and plan. So there's a lot of people come for those 2 to 3 days, and they plan for the whole quarter. And even if you have other things going on in regular basis, it doesn't take a lot more of people's time. They're usually heads down and working.
Sure.
Now, less huge, build up these inefficiencies. Every 2 weeks, you have a sprint planning. And then after the sprint planning, especially when you are doing the less huge, scaled up version, and then the teams do another level of planning. So every 2 weeks you do this. This is like inefficient overheads.
Sure.
So that's one of the biggest efficiencies misses I found in less huge. One of the biggest advantage though was like, because everybody was there, they could collaborate very fast if they have to do a bigger projects. Like teams could say we'll pair up with other teams, or we'll come together, teach or learn. There seems to be more opportunities to grow on less huge compared to on the SAFe, because the teams were very very clearly cut. So the collaboration part within the teams were a little less in the scaled version. versus in the less version. This is what I found were some of the, pros and cons in
Sure.
both.
Let's shift a little bit and move over like to the product ownership side. So, how has your engagement with product owners been, I guess, through your career working as a Scrum Master? And has it differed in the different frameworks that you've worked in?
I would say more than the frameworks, I would say organizations bring in their own culture.
Sure.
So I do believe it is very different from for different organizations. The bottom line is, product owner owns the product, period. There is no two ways about it. So, so they make calls on the product at every level. And so when you can collaborate and talk to them and see their vision, and then they have a very clear vision, and they know how to prioritize, or when they can bring in they can say this is the ROI, or this is what is the business, this is the problem we are solving for the organization, or we say the profit is increasing because our competitors are doing this and we have to do this right now. So we would get into the market, or we are bleeding here, we have to stop this bleeding, this is what we need to, whatever that they need to say. The vision of product owner drives the product, and the collaboration and the relationship with product owners are really, the better relationships, the best product you get. So no matter why the relationship is not good, right? It doesn't matter from what end it is not good. Ultimately, that is the most driving factor. So in my other organization that I work, like I said, culture plays a lot of big role, and the organization structure and culture plays a role. So sometimes when people, so a product should have a product owner. Even SAFe advocates for committees sometimes, but you really want to own the product. So when you don't have that ownership from the product owners, and when you can't build a collaborative relationship, I think the product and the teams and everybody suffers. So I have seen that people who have more of people skills with the business skills, they make a better product owners who are willing to negotiate.
Sure. So tell me about, how do you foster a better relationship with the product owner? Like, what are some things that a Scrum Master can do, whether it's a new Scrum Master or someone who's been a Scrum Master for years? What are some techniques or some tips that you would give for someone who's having a difficult time working with the product owner, trying to build a better relationship with them that's not as adversarial as sometimes it can be in different organizations? What would your advice be for them?
There are no shortcuts for sure. At the end of the day, a lot of these things come down to relationship buildings. If there is a way to build the relationships, even if it is team activity things, what really does help a lot is if your product, whatever the relationship with product owner, if the product owner is part of your team, right? Like if they work with the team members and you, I think that by itself takes a lot of things out of the picture. There won't be adversary things. There is no need to build a relationship because it's happening on a daily basis. If the role is really done on the way it is defined in the agile, like they are part of the team and they're working with the developers, they don't have to be in that room.
Sure.
But they're really dedicated to the whatever number of teams, and they're willing to work with those folks, and they're available. That even if they're in the middle of some other stakeholder things going on, they can say, oh, let me get back to you in an hour or two. That still works. Everybody makes sure that they understand agile teams, plus the PO and the Scrum Master completely forms a team. They're not one, they're independent roles with nobody having an authority over anybody. It is just that, I think you can do a lot of other things like, icebreakers, go out for lunches, do some team building activities and all. But honestly, the real thing that comes across is if you have a working relationship, I think a lot of other things don't matter.
Sure. Tell me about conflict that could arise on the team among developers. Have you been in a situation where you've had to kind of diffuse either an argument or some type of conflict on the team with developers? And are there any techniques that you use for that?
So one of the things you try to do is have a working agreement with the team and come up with a conflict resolution. You talk and say, there are a few things that are very necessary. At the end of the day, you're better off together as a team. So you're working with each other. You're not trying to be a hero there. Everybody's trying to work together. So your goal is that. And then the next thing is, if you do feel like somebody is has some kind of concern issue, whatever, you can air it out, talk about it, what is the problem, discuss it, why can it be done or not done, and have opinions of all the people taken. And if there are two different paths, you can always vote and say, let's go with the majority or something. But most of the time, when you ask, like if you can let them air out their opinions of what the conflict is, right? What is that bothers them at that point? And ask, yeah, I can see that problem. Can anyone tell how we can solve this? And we ask the teams. I really don't see too much of it. I do see people saying I have pain points. I don't see conflicts between people. I do see people saying that by the time you do the development, I won't have enough time to test. Do you understand that all the work will be coming at to the last 2 or 3 days, and I have to work overtime? And so those are all reasonable things. So then we ask, what's the plan? Can you deliver one soon? Which one can you deliver soon? When are you going to deliver this one? So they can actually start testing this sooner. And maybe you can do the things. Don't give all the 4 things on the last day or 2 days before the sprint end. There are things like that. When you have a bunch of people working as a team, there's always things like that.
Right.
Something going on, but not like real adversary, but more like, this is what happened in the last sprint. Can we do something differently this sprint? And anybody has ideas, that's great. If nobody has ideas, then somebody else will, you can contribute and, figure out things.
Sure. So I heard a couple of things. One thing is one of the things that I like to try to preach to my teams and people who I'm doing coaching sessions with is, right, separate the problem from the person, right? The two are not synonymous. And usually both of you have the same end goal in mind, right? We want to deliver the best product in a timely manner, right, by the end of the sprint. Right. So this person is not the problem. The problem is the problem. So let's focus on that. The second thing I heard you say was you want to have a good team working agreement that's got some conflict resolution steps that the team agrees to follow. So when you're coming onto the team as a new Scrum Master, how early do you like to put a team working agreement in place for the team?
I wouldn't go too fast on that. A lot of times I think everybody, when you start new, right, I think it takes a while, like at least a couple of sprints before people get to know each other or feel comfortable with opinions or voicing out, airing out their way of thinking, because they won't feel comfortable. So they may not even come and say a lot of things that are really necessary, because they might think, oh, that's just too simple, or that's too big, or that's too ridiculous or something, even though, oh, be on time or for a meeting might be something people will just say, oh, don't we all always do that?
Sure.
But it's like, but sometimes some of these things are not too big, too small, but people kind of don't open up very fast. So I would say at least 2 to 3 sprints, just vetting out the people and the teams and understanding things. And then maybe I would say after 2 or 3, but like I would say, create the stage for saying we have to do the working agreement and we have to do the conflict resolutions. You guys can go and check it out, how it looks, how does the conflict resolution looks online, things like that. So, that they are in the mindset to get there.
Sure.
I have noticed surprises don't work very well for people. So stage setting helps very much in that cases.
Yeah. So I guess kind of building on the team working agreement, one of the things that we also kind of coach Scrum Masters to do fairly early on after joining a new team is working on the team's definition of ready and definition of done. Can you speak to how important you feel it is for a team to have clear and concise DOD and DOR, and how you work with the team to put those in place?
So definition of ready, when you can say the story is ready and you're ready to start working on it. This is very important, because many times, people who are willing to work on these stories or who needs to work on the stories, they are told it's ready, but they don't really know it's ready or not. Or sometimes they are like, it's not completely ready, but it's like 70% ready or 80% ready. So there are certain things you can take care of, like who is the business stakeholder? If we have questions, who do we ask? Do we really clearly understand what they're asking of us? You can't develop, and as soon as you start working and developing these things, you're running into all of these questions. You really are like wasting time here. You could have done a lot more things upfront during the refinement and figured out more things. And a lot of times people don't even know what to talk in refinement. So, like having an acceptance criteria, having a user's description of the story, asking why it is done and what is the benefit of doing this. And then maybe in certain cases, if you have plenty of technologies, you could say, well, this impacts this application, this language, this skills and all. And then, things like those things. This is very important because when the story is ready, you should be like heads down coding to the story, because you should not have any questions.
Right.
If you have any questions, then the story is not ready. Period. There's no other way of saying this. So a few times you could have little doubts, but little doubts are something that doesn't stop you or take any time for your development once you start that. So you could say, well, I know you said there should be a button, but I can give you a red color or a green color, which one we never nailed the color. But the more details you get in refinement, the less you might have to talk about the story while you're developing. And I think that's the purpose of refinement, where everything is nailed on as much as possible. So you can do heads down coding and not have 20 questions that, my 10 questions were answered, but not the last 10. That's about definition of ready. When definition of done, how do you know a story is done, right? Like how can you say you have done the story? So you have to come up as a team with some of the criteria that you could check on a checklist and say, these are all things that we consider a story is done when it's done. Is it done when you're done development? Is it done when you're done testing? Is it done when you're deploying it in a region? Or is it done when it goes to a UAT? Some of those things. Do you need to do code review? Do you need to have unit tests? Do you need to have automation tests? Do you need to have manual tests? Whatever the teams, based on your organization structure of technology and environments and all, you should come up with some of these things. And these definition of dance will be the same thing across any of your story.
Sure.
So they are not story dependent. So once you take this checklist and you say, based on all these checks that I did, I believe the story is done. So that's a way to stand. You really need that to say a story is done.
Sure. And I like to tell the people that I work with that the definition of done is going to differ from team to team, because every team's skill set is going to be different. There's not a universal definition of done that you can apply to every single team.
Not only skill set, what if the teams are working on two different technologies, right?
Right.
Somebody could be they might have Jenkins servers and they know how to create automation scripts and they do all their scripts and all their testing in automation. But there's some other teams that just mainframe, there's no way they can automate it. Never even if they want to, they probably can't automate it. So then they will say, we have to do just testing. You can't say automation testing. So there are things, and you're right, skills, the skills of the people also matter. So, some places have UAT testing, some places don't have UAT testing. Once you're done with QA is it. And so, but other places, every place is different. So you have to, and teams are different. And so you have to come up with that list. But for your team, that list is same for every story, period.
Right, exactly. So you brought up testing, okay? So I want to talk a little bit about all of the different types of testing that you brought up and the differences between those types of testing. So you brought up manual testing,
yes,
QA testing,
yes,
UAT testing,
yes,
regression testing.
yes.
Was there another one that you brought up?
Unit testing, we can talk about
unit testing.
Yeah.
So tell me from the perspective, because there are some teams that have totally different teams that, for some teams, testing doesn't fall within their definition of done. So they don't have to do those different types of testing. So if you were to explain either to a new Scrum Master that's thinking about getting into Scrum, or to a team that doesn't do testing, kind of give us a breakdown of the different types of testing, how they're different, what they're used for, and why each of those types of testing is still really important to be done before an increment gets pushed into production.
Right. So let's start with the unit test, which is the basic level testing. So when the code is written, the developers actually write tests around their code to test and say the code is working for all the conditions, positive, negative, and all other kind of conditions. And they run the unit test across the code. So this is written by developers. It is at the code level. We can't see it. They run it in their own some kind of framework. So we don't really, these are not something that you hand off to someone. This is written by a developer, and as a good, healthy development standards, they do it. A lot of developers do their own unit testing, and they write unit test codes. So they write it, they test it, and they run the unit test, and they say the code passed the unit test. And we can't really see or tell. They tell you, and we just take the word for it. Then next level of testing is like, so you have normal testing, so you have a story or an initiative, and that needs to be tested, functionally tested for acceptance criteria. That is a QA, where you write test cases or manual or automation. One of the things with QA is like, if you have a story has acceptance criteria. So you really don't need to, you can use the acceptance criteria to test it off and say it passed the acceptance criteria. But in certain cases, bunch of stories come together and then you have to test them all end to end. So you still might have to create some kind of test scenarios or test plan and say, well, end-to-end testing, this is how we want to run this end-to-end testing, because you can't tell which story comes first, which story comes second, and somebody has to put all this together,
Right.
and they have to do the combinations of this. So this is to say the quality of the product is good. We actually designed our product as asked by the product owner, and this is what our product does. Now you have regression testing, which is basically saying, so many times you don't always start a project from scratch, right? You're already having a project running, then you have a new feature you're adding. So when you add a new feature, you test for the new feature, you see the new feature works fine, what it's supposed to do, but you go back and test your old features that were existing on the application and see that nothing got broken or broken because of the introduction of new feature. So that's called regression testing.
And so is that regression testing normally done manually or automatically?
Depends if you guys are having the capabilities of Selenium or whatever. I mean, Selenium is for open source. You could do manually. Mostly, a lot of people do it manually. But if the organization invested in automation scripts and they have automation, they can do automation too.
Okay.
So it depends. I have seen in the past, more people used to do manual. More and more organizations want it to be automated.
Because it's more efficient?
I wouldn't say it is efficient, but they keep saying it's efficient. Ideally, I have not found that personally in my own career to see, because the maintenance also takes a lot. Maybe the tools and technology is getting better, but I think what they're looking for is the speed. So what they want to do is they want to the speed when a development work is done, and if they can just kick it off in the evening without a human presence, that saves a bunch of time.
Right.
You can do certain part of it. I don't know if you can do all of it, because I think maybe it can be done. It depends on how good your infrastructure of your organization is, a technological stack, and have all these servers junking. But then you have dedicated people doing that too. It's not like people can jump in and out and do. You have to have people and teams dedicated to do that.
Sure. Okay.
And then we also talked about UAT testing, which is user acceptance testing. This is not there in almost all of the organizations. Some organizations do this and other organizations don't do this. What they want is they want the users to actually do a check and see if the new functionality that we developed and coded is working according to what they asked for. So they bring in some users. Usually, whoever your folks are, most of these people are internal users, not external users, organizational users. They bring it in and they're creating UAT testing for 1 week or 10 days in other places, and they just say, can you do some spot checking and see if things are looking good? So in my manufacturing job, we used to bring people from the factories for a period of 2 weeks, and they used to do some spot UAT checking, not completely, but some level of UAT testing, and they say, yeah, it looks good, everything is good, and can you try these scenarios? Because they were working in factory, they exactly knew what needs to happen versus what we thought we heard from people on the requirements. In some places, they have a teams, and they have a organization has a structure where the UAT folks actually come and they're there all the time, and they do UAT testing. That was one other thing we talked about. Did I miss any testings and things?
I think that's it. So tell me about the difference between what is your opinion on manual testing just in general versus the automated testing, and how do those tie into kind of this new buzzword that I know has been being
CI/CD pipeline.
CI/CD pipeline and DevOps, right?
Yes. So the name of the game is move fast, right? With Agile, the whole idea is small increments, and fast increments, right? Like think big, start small, scale fast, right? That's the whole thing. So they want small teams, they want a big product, and they want to scale up fast. So one of the things that comes with automation, which is why they're going to automation, is it kind of if you so the deployments, manual deployments take a lot of time and a lot of effort and to get them. So, but if they can set up a Jenkins server, they're automatically, you have jobs that kick off these things. And the moment a developer says the code is done, it gets merged into the code repository, everything gets deployed very easily. It's automated and you can deploy 10 regions. There is no effort. It doesn't take anybody. But even when you are doing it manually, a lot of times it's such a tedious work. All the files are copied, all the exes are copied. Something goes wrong, then they struggle to figure out what is wrong because it will be one little small thing that you can't think and you won't see. And sometimes little things like that take like hours to resolve. So in that sense, I think some of those concept of DevOps or CI/CD pipelines play into picture. What they're also hoping is integration, like when they want more and more code integrations. Before they used to send the code was merged only at the end of the day or something like that. Not anymore. They want it merged as soon as you're done with your code review and you feel code is good. It needs to be merged into Git repository or something. So they want continuously integrated code. So, code is never too much on branches.
Sure.
One of the things that what that does is it keeps your code really very, very up to mark. But the thing with that is they have to have a lot of automation testing to say your code is good. So this is why you need a lot of things are looking like more and more technology is needing people to move away from manual to more in automation just to keep up with the technology. So efficiency wise, in the long run, maybe the technology will help, but upfront you have to get the folks, the team members to actually adapt, learn the skill and scale themselves up to speed up to do real work on that. So I think that takes a lot of investment. So that's why I don't know the efficiency, right? Like I never see the end product
The end result,
to a
yeah.
place where, they really can say, oh, let's turn on the switch and it happens.
Right.
But you can't resist the change either. This is the direction they're going. Will
Right.
they ever get to that place? I don't know. But this is the direction all the organizations are choosing to go.
Sure. Want to talk to you about change, right? Organizational change. Have you worked in an organization where maybe there wasn't necessarily buy-in from either the management level or C-suite for Agile, yet kind of in the trenches at the team level, they were implementing Agile?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things is, let me answer this in a different way. A lot of organizations claim they're agile, and a lot of the organizations claim that they're moving to agile or they're undergoing agile transformations. And right or wrong, they're all in different shades of agile. So one of the things, the more I read about agile, the more I realize is agile is a necessity of today's day. So there is no way around it. People have to adapt very fast and have to start becoming agile. Otherwise, the business context is changing so fast that you can't keep up. That being said, there are a lot of organizations, like you said, the teams at the lower level might adapt, but the organization has not completely bought in. They don't succeed ultimately. That's just against, it makes it very hard for them to be successful. Even when the management buys in and they introduce Agile Transformation, it is not ever enough. Agile Transformation is not like small 1 or 2 years thing. It's a long-term thing.
Right.
And it is just not enough to say that the leadership and the management or the organization bought in it, and they're asking the organization to go through this. It is actually the fact that they have to go through a lot of trainings and have to have a lot of those things thinking, because they really don't know. They say, oh, we are adapting Agile because the organization said, but they don't know what a product owner means, what a Scrum Master means. So they are going to take you in a wrong direction based on whatever their own learnings are, which is waterfall. And based on the command and control, they're going to say, this is what Agile means, because they have no training. So I think this constant training and getting the people to understand what Agile means and this continuous learning concepts, a lot of these things, they're not like I said, from bottom up, it's really very hard. I believe it won't succeed beyond a point. Yes, you get some things. You can get the teams to move fast and all, but the top level buy-in is not there, you really cannot exceed the expectations there.
Sure. So if you had the opportunity to speak to one of these executives at the top, and you were to try to convince them to be bought in, or to try to bring them along on this journey with you, like, what are some things you would say? How would you win them over?
So I think one of the things I would say is, today organizations, today business context is changing very fast. So in order to keep up with your outer business context and your competitors, the way to do this is to innovate a lot.
Right.
So innovations can happen in three ways. One is like you do this agile, like you have a product that you are making and doing it as an agile. The second level is you say, well, now our product has become agile. We want to open new markets, and you extend your product. The second level. The third level is complete innovation, which is like out of box thinking. To get to the third level, you have to start at the first, second, and third. So a lot of these things are the only way of survival, because creative destruction is at its highest speed with business context. That's one thing. So there's no way around this anymore. For any organization, there's no way out. So you have to go to agile. But the fact that how would that benefit? You can see more things delivered to your customers, or more ROIs on your products very quickly when you do 2 weeks deliverables.
Right.
So I think there is real thing that you can see within every 2 weeks, real expectations for the customers. So I think you're meeting your customer needs very fast. Maybe not all of their needs, but very fast. If you don't understand their needs, you can pivot very fast. So
Right.
that kind of helps to keep you in sync. So I think I would say these two, and the alignment too. I think in organization, Agile also brings in a lot of alignment at the business and IT level. It brings them together. You kind of see all of it at the organization level rather than as my department and your team. So I think it brings in a lot of alignment. So I would say these are a couple of reasons why you have to do it. And my personal take, there is no, like I said, you can't really not live in today's world not doing Agile and be successful.
Right. Okay, let me ask you this question. We're going to pivot to Scrum ceremonies. Which Scrum ceremony do you think is the most important one, and why?
So my personal take on Scrum ceremonies, right? Like as a Scrum Master, my biggest of all the ceremonies, I would say daily stand-up is the most valuable one for me as a Scrum Master. And I would think that would be true for even the team members and the product owner. Your story of what happened today and what is not happening, or what is the roadblocks and how to move it and what are our problems. I think that every single day, that story that we talk about is very, very important. That said, there are other things like overall retro reviews. These are all important, but I think because the moving story is your daily standard, I think your daily standard. Personally, these are just subjective and feelings. So personally, I think that is the most important one for me.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, so when it comes time to do the retrospective, for example, do you have a particular technique for how you like to facilitate your retrospectives, or do you have a particular tool that you like to use for retrospectives?
This is one of the places where I could really improve. Very fluid with some of the things, like making fun games out of things. I do know there are books that say how to make a game out of the things. I really would like to do where the teams feel very comfortable talking about the stories and telling what happened these 2 weeks, what went right, what didn't go right. I don't think whether you do the games, whether you do have some kind of needs or not. Team members after a point, they just tell you exactly the story, what happened. If anything went wrong, they tell you. Everything went good, they tell you that too. So that's not the problem. But I think what would make it a little more fun, if you are doing it every 2 weeks, right? It gets boring. I think that's what I'm recognizing. So if you could add some jazz to that, right? Like to some pizzazz or whatever to make it a little more enthused. One thing that we in my job we tried was like make some concepts, like Thanksgiving concept. What are you grateful for? Christmas concept, some of those things, and or some games. Kind of say what is a truths and a one lie. These are a couple of things that I have tried, and they're good. Or sometimes just sharing information about best vacation spots or anything like that. Just a little bit of icebreakers. I think you want to really build relationship, and that is what those icebreakers or the games or the plays or all that fun tries to do, move you in the path of relationship building. It does help because the retrospection is about inspect and adapt, but it is also about bringing the team together. So they get better at working with each other, and they feel very happy to work with each other. Ultimately, I think that's one of the goals.
Sure. So I know recently that you made or are in the process of making a transition to a new position. What would you say was the hardest part about the job search going on right now, right? We're on the hopefully the tail end of a pandemic that we've kind of been suffering through. So there have been a lot of people who have been looking for a job change for one reason or another. Some people are fearful of making that. Some people are fearful of change in general, right? And so some people have been fearful about making that change right now, or some people are potentially considering a new career and unsure about maybe how fertile the job market is for Scrum Masters. So tell me a little bit about how difficult it was for you to land a position, and maybe if you have any advice for any job seekers right now.
I would say definitely the whole COVID has taken a toll on the whole job market. It hasn't been easy. Yeah, it could have been much easier than what we are going through right now. It seems like it's turning around, but it is really not like, oh, you have a bunch of calls, even with experience, even with everything. It's not like, it's out there, and anybody can jump in and find a job. That's probably not true even today. Though I would say there are a lot of options. Like if you're starting and you're making a shift into this direction, I would say take whatever first you get, because you can build on it very easily. You have nothing much to lose at that point, so I wouldn't worry too much about making a right call there. Versus when you're trying to actually move from one place to another, maybe then you have little more space and time, and maybe you can take a little more time to do that. But there is no shortcuts. I think you just have got to keep applying and keep trying to network and be open to any idea. I think I have got a lot of good advice from a lot of my peers who told me, like, there is no reason to only narrow your search in one way or the direction. You can, like full-time contracts, all kinds of things, right? Like remote working options, just open up, and but you got to try, you got to apply, you got to take the calls. Some of them won't go your way, and you just keep doing that until one works for you, and the one that works for you works really good for you.
Sure.
So
Sure.
yeah.
So what's next for you, Usha? Like
Uh,
where do you see yourself in the next few years? Like, is there another level or another iteration of yourself that you see working with agile teams or in this community?
I do, Victor. I honestly do. I'm not sure I'll become a coach or anything like that, but I do feel like I have grown a lot, and I feel like there's a lot more to grow. And so it might be something I'll maybe start, taking, I don't know, maybe expanding horizons into other areas, but I feel like there is a lot more to learn, and there is more to grow. So I hope to continue going in that path. I don't know where that's going to take me right now, but I just thought when I started with Scrum Master, there's what more can you do in Scrum Master? Now I feel like there's a lot more you can do in Scrum Master versus what more can you do, right?
Right.
So that's the perception change. So
Sure.
yeah, I think there's more. I just don't know what it is right now.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. We have a few folks watching us. I think we've got about 9 or 10 people watching us right now. So I want to go ahead and open up the
Sure.
chat to see if anyone has any questions for myself or that they'd like me to pose to Usha. And so one of the questions that we've got is, I guess as far as a Scrum Master goes, how well versed do you have to be as far as verifying if the work is done that the team is delivering, like as far as functionality goes?
This is not the role of Scrum Master,
Sure.
right? This is truly the team members either know when the work is done, because it's within the team, somebody else cross checks your work. Or if even if both of you checked and everything looked good and something might have missed, it comes out in testing or some other phase. But it's truly not on a Scrum Master to go and check somebody's work and see it is done. What you would like to know is if it is done, then that should be more into done column on regular basis and cadence of the cards.
Sure.
So what you want to tell them is it done? Will it be done by this sprint or will it not be done? So what is the reason if it's not done? Is there anything we can do to help you move the thing? But you don't really go check, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I mean, a lot of people see the role of a Scrum Master and hear that they work with technical teams delivering software, and they feel like they need to be savvy in software delivery or testing. And I try to remind people, like, the role of a Scrum Master is a process role, right? We are responsible for the process of how it gets done, but the team is actually responsible for doing the technical work itself. And so the role of a Scrum Master, you can take this process and apply it to just about everything, right? And it just so happens that we're applying Scrum to software development. And so although we don't need to know how to do the work, we just need to keep the team true to that process.
Right. So what does help though is, understanding what they're talking, your teams about technologies or, like some of the things. Being too much of a layman might hurt, not being able to help them. So, understanding what they're saying and how you can help them. Even asking them, how can I help you? I would like to help you. What do you think I should be doing? And sometimes they themselves tell you. So, you don't have to be technically savvy, but you should at least know how to talk to them, to understand them, so you can help them.
Sure. Let me ask you about this. How important do you feel empathy is to have as a Scrum Master? Like the soft skills. A lot of times we talk about the technical skills and understanding the framework, but what about empathy and some of these soft emotional skills?
I think it's all about that, really. I personally think it's all about that. But I also don't think it's just Scrum Master role. More and more I'm seeing product owner roles and Scrum Master roles, all of these leadership roles, right? The higher level of empathy and higher level of soft skills actually make you better successful in those roles versus the people with low level of EQs or, empathy. What it does is, like, when they're saying some pain point, right, whether you understand or not, the intent to help them should be very natural.
Sure.
So, and that's where the empathy comes in. And that's really part of your role. You're a servant leader and, taking the impediments out of their way. How would you do if you're not even feeling empathy for them, so you can't do that, because if you don't see a problem that they are seeing, or you don't agree that that's a problem, then you are not going to help them.
Right.
So I think very good question there, Victor. Really, I think it is mostly high level of soft skills, EQ, and empathy that makes you more successful in that role. Personally, I believe that.
I think so too. I agree with you. So let's talk about delivery, right? Let's talk about moving items to done. I know when we worked at an organization, we ran a lot of experiments attempting to increase the team's velocity, or at least stabilize the team's velocity and make it more predictable for future sprints. So can you tell me about the one change that you've made or that you implemented that made the biggest impact on your team's velocity?
So it's a little hard on the velocity one, okay?
Sure.
So I won't say that, I really won't claim too much success there, but I will tell you one thing that that kind of helps a lot over a period of time, because the teams don't stay the teams, they keep reorging teams, right? Like over different teams.
Right.
One of the things I have recognized was having a sprint leader rotation where they facilitate their own stand-ups and you are one of them for one sprint, kind of gets everybody on understanding what to do, how to do, and then questioning and being more vested and asking the questions to close the stories. Or that's one thing that helped bring up people fast to more speed and more buy-ins, and looking at the board as if it means something to each and every one of them.
Sure.
The other thing was just-in-time demos or mid-sprint demos. Those two things were very valuable, I think. The mid-sprint demos, what it does is, if you're aiming for a mid-sprint demo, a lot of people say, what can they do for mid-sprint to demo something? Or if they can't do that, they're like, can we get a stakeholder? So that builds relationship, one thing, with the stakeholders. Other thing, it puts in it improves the velocity, because now they have in the half of your sprint, you're trying to do some demos to somebody. So you have some commitments here. So I've seen those two things improve a lot more. And then I think over a period of time, when the team becomes more performing, the velocity becomes better. There is no shortcuts on that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think that's it for the questions that we've got, Usha. Do you have any closing remarks for any of your fellow Scrum Masters or aspiring Scrum Masters?
I would just say it's a great path you guys have chosen. Keep at it. No, nothing is very easy. So, I've got to give it all and keep trying. I don't think there is any easy path for any roles, or not just Scrum Master roles. So I think if you're choosing this role, then give it your all and just keep trying, and all the best for all of you
Wonderful.
guys.
Wonderful. Thank you again for your time, Usha. I really appreciate it. You have a wonderful evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye,
All
Nathan.
right. Bye bye,
Take
Usha.
care.